Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Monday, and all of our guests today, including Garry Monahan, standing by, are sponsored by Passant Motors. May Day. It's May Days at Passant Motors. Purchase a vehicle in the month of May and choose one of 3 great promotional options. May Days only at Passant Motors. Learn more at basantmotors.com. Garry Monahan is going to join us now. Former NHL center, played 4 seasons, productive seasons with the Canucks in the 70s. Former Canucks radio analyst. And the first ever, this is back in 1963, the first ever NHL draft pick taken first overall by Montreal in 1963. And we thought we'd get Garry on because this year's draft in Montreal,
that's right.
Montreal has the first first overall draft pick. So there he is, Garry Monahan. First of all, Garry, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Are you following the NHL playoffs? And if so, what stands out?
Well, I'm following it to a certain extent, not as religiously as perhaps I should. But, of course, I played 5 years in Toronto as well. So watching that series a little more closely, and, of course, it's over now. And, I have a love-hate relationship with Toronto. I mean, my mother was so angry with Toronto for trading me in 1974. She to Vancouver, that is. So she carried that grudge to her death, to her grave. And from a legacy standpoint, I've got to continue that grudge.
Well, join the club, Garry. Hey, June 5th, 1963, the first ever NHL draft in Montreal. Montreal has the first pick, and they go for the kid from Ontario. You were 16 years old. I think I've got that right. What do you remember about that day?
Well, I wish there was more of a story to that episode, because I don't recall any build-up to that draft at all.
Wow.
What happened really was Sam Pollock phoned our house well after the draft and told my dad that Montreal Canadiens had drafted Garry Monahan, and we didn't know what he was talking about.
Wow.
In fact, I remember my dad saying, my brother was actually obviously a couple of years older than me and a better hockey player because he was older, I suppose. And so my dad's response was, well, gee, Sam, you must mean Pat Monahan, not Garry. And Sam said, no, it's a 16-year-old draft, and we drafted Garry. So from then, we knew what happened, but we were out of the loop.
So no fanfare, no media coverage, nothing like we see today, Garry?
And more importantly, no money.
Yes.
No big money.
Why did the Habs
anyway,
go?
Sam Pollock and Scotty Bowman came over to the house and in Scarberia in Toronto, and said that I could go to either Peterborough or Montreal with the Junior Canadiens, or because again, you said it, a 16-year-old draft. So in those days, the NHL teams owned their own junior teams.
Yes.
So the Peterborough Petes, the Montreal Junior Canadiens were really part of the farm system. And so once I went to Peterborough, I was already on the elevator system, if you will, to the in the Montreal fold as a 16-year-old in Peterborough.
Why did the Habs go for you, Garry? What was it about your game that they liked?
Well, good question. Hard to tell. I know that I was a good skater. I went to St. Mike's in Toronto, which most people out here probably wouldn't understand what that was, but St. Mike's was kind of a hockey school, and I didn't go there for hockey. My dad just sent me there for scholastics, of all things. But I tried out for the team. That was the Bantam team in grade 9, made the team, jumped a year, went to midget, did well, played with the likes of Jerry Meehan and Mike Corrigan. You might remember Mike Corrigan.
Former Canucks.
And even Mike Walton.
Yeah, another former Canucks.
Mike Walton, yep.
Yeah, so anyway, it was, we had an arena right on campus. So we played every single day, which was a real bonus for me. And I guess because I was a good skater and at that level was scoring goals. So I think maybe Roger Nielsen had some impact in that first draft. But one of the interesting things, Donnie, things I think, and maybe your viewers would want to know this, if they're old enough to remember, But the second draft choice, a guy that I played on the same team with in St. Mike's, was Peter Mahovlich. Okay, so I was drafted first by Montreal. Peter Mahovlich was drafted second from the same team by Detroit. And, I give a lot of credit to Sammy Pollock because he was a big enough man to realize his mistake. So after 2 years, he traded me for Peter. So I went to Detroit. Peter went to Montreal, and Peter went on to stardom and playing with the likes of Guy Lafleur, and I went on to mediocrity playing with the likes of Gordie Howe.
Yeah. You did okay, Gary.
Gary, I want to get your thoughts on. It's interesting you say you knew nothing about the draft. You have the kids today. There's tons of articles written. These kids are going to academies. They're eating right on and off the ice. What are your thoughts when you see these kids go through the draft now compared to what you did?
Well, good question. I suppose the pressure would be one thing. When I got to Montreal after 3 years in Peterborough, I felt a lot of pressure. A lot of French being spoken in the dressing room. I'm, hobnobbing with Jean Beliveau and Henry Richard, J.C. Tremblay, and I was a nervous kid at that time. And I felt the pressure and really couldn't live up to the potential, perhaps, and that's why I was traded to Detroit. So I can just imagine the pressure that's on these kids with all the buildup and all the money and the time that their parents have put into their careers. Where in my case, again, I went to St. Mike's. I played hockey after school, and my parents really didn't have any input into my career. In fact, my parents never saw me play a game until I went to Peterborough.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah, so at St. Mike's, they never saw me play and really had no interest.
I want to read a text to you in our Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. Please let Gary know when he's on the show how much hockey fans enjoyed his years with Jim Robson doing the Canucks radio. How fun was that?
Well, it was good. On the negative side, I always felt I should still be playing hockey, right. Not doing the broadcasting. So we'd be in the team bus, and I'd be sitting up at the front with Jimmy Robson, who's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
And with the newspaper writers and so on. You've gone black, by the way. Am I still on?
Yeah. Oh, you're still on.
Still on.
Okay, the screen here has gone black, so I don't see you guys. But
Gary, there's no show that's better at technical difficulties than ours. Trust me. Keep talking.
Maybe at my end, I'm not very techy. Yeah. But anyway, it was a good transition, I guess, for me to still be connected with hockey, doing the color with Jimmy Robson, and hanging out with the guys to a certain extent. So it was good. It was fun. The team was pretty good in those days, so I did enjoy it. But as I say, the only negative was I felt I should still be at the back of the bus with the guys.
Yeah. Hey, what were your memories of your 4 years playing with the Canucks?
Well, they were good years for me because, Vancouver was more or less a new team. Like they came in 1970, and I came here in 1974. Expectations probably weren't that high. And compared to Toronto, for example, where they had won the Cup in 67, so it wasn't that far removed. But expectations were lower, I would suggest, in Vancouver than in Toronto. And so I kind of settled into a nice niche. Phil Maloney was a great coach. Didn't put any extra pressure on you. And that first year in Vancouver with Gary Smith in goal in 1974, we ended up in first place in our division. Mm-hmm. So that was a real bonus and kind of a pleasant surprise. So, and I liked Vancouver well enough. When I retired, I settled in Vancouver. So we're still here, and it was a great move for me.
Before we let you go, Gary, Canuck training camp is in Whistler. Are you lacing them up? Or are you going to try? You look as fit as a fiddle.
Yeah.
You're into your. You're 39 years old. You look fantastic.
4 years ago with the Canuck alumni, and but my knee started to act up a little bit. Guys like Cliffy Ronning were just too fast for me, so I gave it up about 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm 76 almost, so hanging in there until I was about 72 or 73 was pretty good. But speaking of Whistler, we still ski a lot too, so it's hard to ski and play hockey.
Yeah, well, you look great. And Gary, thanks so much for this. It's a story that we wanted to tell for a long time, the first ever NHL draft pick. I don't think a lot of people know that, but thanks so much for joining us, and all the best.
Good seeing you guys, Donnie. Thank you so much for having me on. Pleasure.
Yeah, no problem.